You are listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast, hosted by Tom Baker. Thank you for listening. Your position has been triangulated. Drone army has been dispatched to your location. Commencing attack run in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Courage, Guts, and Stupid Confidence. I really want to thank my sponsors, of which none of this would be possible. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here on the old Bravo Creative Podcast. First off, it's time for a little bit of a confession of sorts of how a big part of this podcast came to be. And as I work through this podcast process, I feel that it's helpful to see how ideas begin and how that process from idea or dream to creation is realized. And I feel that the more you know, the more confident you'll become. And the more I go down this road and the interactions I have with my guests and my audience, the more I've looked for that meaning in what I'm doing and to what end. So today we're going to vary off course and go down the trail less traveled, and we're going to see what's over that hill. And then we're going to backtrack a little, and we're going to do something that hasn't been done on the show as of yet. And I'm excited and a little bit scared. And I know that my guest is a little bit scared, but what the hell? Because I'm all about trying new things. So let's see how all this works. So first, the confession/admission of gratitude. So last year I was getting my hair did by my barber and good friend Kix Nelson, and we were chit-chatting and shooting the bull, and he told me about this dream he had of doing a podcast. Now, Kix runs a successful barbershop here in Rogersville, Missouri. It's called the Outlaw Gentleman. And Kix has a lot of interesting people that sit in his barber's chair, and naturally he always strikes up a conversation. So his dream of starting a podcast seemed like a natural fit. He wanted to interview some of the local hidden gems and salt of the earth of the area, and wanted to bring this little town of Rogersville together to show all of us that we had some really neat people living among us. And me, being a guy who always likes to try something new, I offered to help him with his podcast dream in whatever capacity. So before long, Kix purchased all of his gear after doing a ton of research, and I'm actually using the same gear that he purchased. And he decided on his marketing strategy, and he built a web page, and he got all of his pieces together, and he really went at it with a vigor. And he got his guests scheduled. And then he called me and he asked me if I would come in and be a guest host on one of his shows. And I said, hells yeah, because I like to talk. And we did the first recording and I was hooked. And before I knew it, I was helping out on a few more of his shows. And it was a ton of fun. And it got my wheels turning. And eventually, long story short, I was able to navigate this process of podcasting by my experiences with my good friend Kix. And I am forever indebted to him. And thank you, brother. I love you. So that's the confession and the big thank you with a hug and a couple of little baby kisses. And here's the takeaway for me. I was able to do this podcast with the help and the hard work of others. My friend Kix unknowingly gave me the confidence just by being around his can-do attitude and being privy to his dream. And it affected me. And it's super cool. And you'll never really know where it's going to come from. But I truly feel that if you're willing to help and stretch a little bit, it'll get your wheels turning. And we all want to be needed in some capacity, and asking for help and giving help to others and their ideas and their dreams and seeing them to creation is a beautiful thing. So boom, I'm done. Into the happy, sappy part of today's podcast. So this indirectly brings us to my guest today, because my guest is a big part of this overall process that's been happening out here in Rogersville, Missouri, that we've been working on for the last, it seems like it's about a year. And here's why this is a first for this podcast. My guest today isn't an award-winning cinematographer. He's not an accomplished director. He hasn't been classically trained as an actor or a musician. From the film and creative arts crowd, at first glance, my guest may seem unimpressive in that regard. But to me, my guest shows qualities that I strive to get back to. A sheer willingness and joy to get out and create something. And he makes it look effortless. But my guest has managed to film multiple projects each week, run a local streaming television show each week on Facebook for 6 months at least, was able to secure multiple program sponsors, runs his own business, actually runs a couple of his own businesses in a completely different field than filmmaking or content creation. He's the guy that most of my audience has probably never heard of, but after you listen to him, you'll want him on your speed dial. And I want to welcome him to the mic, the hilariously blunt, the real American hero, my good friend, Mr. John Pope.
Well, thanks for having me, man. That's quite the intro, and I don't feel like I deserve that, but that is very nice. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You've been busy, man.
I've been busy, yeah, and it seems like we all have. I was thinking about as I was driving to work, and I was listening to some talk show, and they were talking about COVID being we're almost done with it, and I thought, man, I've been busier this year than I ever have.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been nice. It hasn't seemed like we've had COVID or anything.
Right. So no, it's been super busy in a weird way too. It's not like we're really making money. We're just staying busy.
We are.
It's like we had a pace before COVID that we worked in, and then we took that whole quarantine and we sat around and didn't do much. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we got to get back to work. And it's just, we kind of jammed up as much stuff as we could do to like seem worthwhile, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think guys like you and I, because we've talked a lot, and I think we're very similar in a lot of ways. We don't do shell shocked very well, No. And so when people are saying stay at home, don't do anything, don't go outside, you're going to die. Yeah, for a day or two, I was like, okay. And then I was like, no, I got to do something.
I got to do, yeah.
So, guys like you and I, we got to invent stuff to do, or, we can't just sit around and
it really is a type.
It is.
There's, and we have some other friends that are like that too out here. And actually, I think we're all kind of in the same group right now. We've been working on this project out here, and we're all kind of in the same thing. We're like, let's generate something for us to do.
Yeah. And I'd say it's been more of a blessing than it has a job,
right?
Just to be able to navigate what has been the weirdest year of my life. So,
oh yeah. Well, and so I'll give the guests a little bit of a background here. So, and I've actually, I met you about a year ago.
About a year. Yeah.
Yeah. And so prior to COVID, we had some little local poker nights that we were putting on out here, and I actually met John at one of the poker nights that we put on, and we kind of started talking, and I had been doing the podcast with Kix, and that's where I met Will Worsham, and Will. So to kind of go back, during COVID, we got this idea out here to start, for lack of a better word, a streaming television station out in Rogersville. We had one person, which is John, started a little cooking show with his daughter. And how many did you all wind up doing?
Oh gosh, I would say we've done 10 plus.
So they started doing this little cooking show, and John has a very unique sense of humor, and his daughter plays off of that unique sense of humor really well. And they came up with little meals or recipes that I guess they're kind of family recipes, things you came up with over the years.
They're very unique.
Yeah, they're it's not creme brulee or anything like that.
It's not risotto with lobster or anything like that. Yeah.
But John came up with these recipes, and they got on Facebook and they filmed it and they posted them, and people really enjoyed them out here. And it was people enjoyed it outside of just your friend group. Yeah. There were people within, just the Rogersville community that saw it and really enjoyed it. And that got Will Worsham's wheels turning, and he said, hey, why don't we just start basically a TV station of sorts? And so it's a little bit of a radio station / TV station / streaming station.
It's a bunch of different things.
It's a bunch of stuff. But we've had a really good time, and we ultimately got a little studio out here that we started using about halfway through the year. But that little idea that John had early on kind of got everything going and got other people talking, and we basically built this. And so our fire chief out here in Rogersville, his name is Rich Sturts. He has a little Facebook channel called Rich TV. And you kind of helped, didn't you help get that started a little bit? You kind of coaxed him on to get it going. And
he would, he was putting out all this content every week, and
and this was before.
Oh, this has been like 2, maybe 3 years ago. And, Rich is a good friend of mine. He's a guy about town, he knows everybody. Yeah. And so, he'd do a turkey video, turkey hunting. And, next thing you know, he's sitting on someone's front porch talking to them about, this or that.
Right. And the next thing you know, he's out in Colorado hunting elk.
Just doing all these different things. And, we're all living vicariously through him at this point. But I told him, because he kept saying, hey, this is Rich TV. And I said, you need your own Facebook page, man. And he's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And, you know me by now, my technical abilities are very limited, but I do know how to make a Facebook page. And so we started Rich TV. And it's been a blast, just kind of watching him and commenting on him, his content.
Right.
And it was just kind of a community little thing, that he had started.
And, so when Will got all of this together, we started kind of pulling in all these different content pieces, these different people out here that were doing stuff. And we just kind of said, hey, what if we post it all in one spot and people were able to see it? And it worked out really good. We actually, the community in a whole, they look at this stuff now. And then it got into local high school and even city sports too. Then weren't they I think they were videoing not even high school sports. It was like 8th grade, 7th grade stuff as well too.
Yeah, we're covering a lot of different sports right now.
So and this goes back to kind of my intro, is that from this little tiny idea and willingness to get out and help each other, it kind of spawned this bigger thing, and people kind of put all their talents into one big pool. And because there were a bunch of us that were a little stir crazy from sitting around the house, it turned into something that, and it's still in its inception, but it was really cool watching it grow just over the span of like the last 8 months and really seeing how it just kind of moved and gained momentum. It's naturally, it gained more momentum once the baseball season kicked in, and football and basketball. You all were able to have a lot more content that you could put out. But before we get into too far down into K-Raj, I want to ask, so John, you not only do all of this content and been putting out stuff, you go to all these basketball games and football games and film them, and then you have a weekly show, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. But you also have another job that you do probably primarily, right? 40
Absolutely.
hours a week?
Yep. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones here in Rogersville.
So you're completely outside of the field of...
Yeah. I have no experience in this field whatsoever.
Right.
So yeah, my day job is much different than my night job.
Now you and your wife are part owners in Raj Fit here, which is like a CrossFit gym. Is that correct?
It's like a CrossFit gym. My wife and 2 other ladies here in town, they own it, and we all just kind of run it, and it's been it's been a nice outlet for us as well.
Sure.
Over the quarantine.
So you got Edward Jones, you got this. You got any other jobs out there that you do that
not really
nobody knows about? Okay.
I don't know that I have any more time.
Yeah, I would say you probably don't have enough time. Now you used to run, it was like a t-shirt company, right?
Yeah. So a few friends of ours, I was in the military before. And so a couple buddies that we'd gotten out, we'd still keep in touch what's going on with our unit, overseas. And, we'd hear about a guy that got hurt, or, one of our guys got killed, or we'd be like, well, there's got to be a better way for us all to stay connected. So it just started with, we were going to create a web page and we could all just share stuff back and forth. Then we thought, well, how are we going to pay for this? You know, I mean, because there's little costs here and there to do all that. And somebody's like, oh, let's sell a few T-shirts here and there. You know, so when it was just supposed to be for our unit only, we put them out. They got popular, and we started selling. You went from selling like one or two here and there to, I don't know, probably 10, 15,000 a month.
Seriously.
Yeah. In T-shirt sales.
So now how did you publicize all that stuff? Like, did you just like build a website and say, hey, this is...
It's very much like K-Raj. I'm like, I'm just going to dabble in this a little bit. No, I mean, I'm that guy that, and I know you're like this too, but I'll start something, say, hey, I'm going to spend a little bit of my time on this. And then it's never good enough, you know? And so I'm just constantly wanting to get better at it.
Tweaking it, yeah.
We didn't keep any of this money. We would take this money and be able to, rebuild someone's house if they were an amputee or something. And so very little of this money was even used for operating costs, but when we got to that $10,000, $15,000 range, I mean, that represented me up till 2 or 3 in the morning, promoting this.
And this T-shirt company was kind of like 9line.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or Grunt Style, those guys.
Yep.
What was the name of the company?
On Point USA.
On Point USA. That's cool. Well, if we still have like links to any of that kind of stuff, or if you have pictures, we might post some of that stuff in the description. Yeah.
No, it was fun, and it was very rewarding to be able to do that. And I felt like I got to keep in touch with, the guys, give back a little bit. And I know, the guys working with me did too. So
that's cool. That's cool. So you went through all of that. And I want to get back on some of your kind of how this progression basically started, because I don't know if you got in my audience out there, this is not by any means, there is no massive amount, there's no production value in a lot of this stuff. Everything that we're doing, a lot of the folks that work for K-Raj, I would say just about everybody that works for K-Raj, I am the smartest person in the room when it comes to cameras. And that is like, everybody knows that. They look at me and they look at me as, this is the guy that knows stuff about cameras. That is the level that K-Raj is working with, but they kind of they refused to let that be the thing that stopped them. And I think that's what's awesome to me. And they don't call me all the time and say, hey, Tom, we need to do it this way. They just figured out a way to do it. And I appreciate it, and I've let them do it too, because I like that idea. I like that concept, that can-do attitude of going, you know what? We'll do it ourselves. This is what I want to do. And they don't get caught up in a bunch of the technical, because the technical it stops pretty much everybody. And that's something that you guys were able to do, is just go, this is the content. I don't know how we're going to record it. I mean, folks, you should have seen some of the rigs these guys came up with. Just a rig in general, like, and I've even gotten onto John a couple times, like with his setups in the studio in here. I'm like, dude, that looks so ghetto.
Now you're referring to the GoPro cameras mounted with rubber bands.
They're mounted with, so they have a tripod, and there's nothing that's holding the camera to the tripod except for like a newspaper rubber band that was found, and it works. And John is completely happy with that process, but the point I'm trying to make, folks, is we don't have to, number one, you don't have to have all the gear. You just have to have the will to get it done. Yeah. And that's what John has. And not only John, but Rich and Will and a lot of these guys, they have put a ton of time into it. But what's happened after that is that once they created their content, they were able to look at it and see how they could improve it. It's almost like they're self-editing, and that's a really neat process to watch somebody else do it. And I know I probably went through it as well at some point, but it's been so far removed from me, I don't think about it anymore. But seeing you guys do it has been a ton of fun. It's like, that's more fun than watching the content. It's like, oh, look what they did this time. Yeah, that was kind of neat.
Well, it's baptism by fire. It is. And I think back to the Quarantine Kitchen, which was the first thing that me and my daughter did. And it started out with once again, we're in quarantine and Dad, what are we going to do today? And I'm just so bored. Oh, Dad, come on, And we were making this family recipe called cow chips, which is a delicious Mexican little casserole. But I thought, let's film this. I thought my mom and dad would watch, my sisters, everybody, people that knew me would get a little hoot out of it. We filmed it with an iPhone 5. iPhone 5, no mics, no anything.
The iPhone 10 was out by then, right?
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
I think the 11s were out by then. I don't know, but we're 5 phones behind already. That was the biggest piece of equipment we had, and so we filmed this little show. And if you watch the evolution of my daughter, who's referred to as Little B, she's clammy in that first show. She'll say a little bit here and there,
Right.
By show 10, she's like, Dad, I own this show. I run it, But
I think by show 4, she was calling me out on that show.
She called you out, I think, at the very end of the show. But it's funny because we didn't really have anything we wanted to put out. It wasn't like, man, we wanted.
You were looking for things to put out.
Yeah, we were just like, let's put out this little cooking show. Why we're here? We're bored. And after show 1, I'd get private messages, and when you get when's the next show? And we're laughing. We're thinking people are messing with us, right? And that's just how that started, when it's like, we didn't get paid for it. We actually we advertised sponsors, but we didn't really have sponsors. We were just, but it was the joy in a tough time that we saw that show brought, that we felt it brought. That's what made us keep going.
Now, we need to go back and see if we can do you still have?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So we'll need to make sure we can at least download a couple of those so the guests can see them if they'd like. The nice thing about this is that it was done almost as it was done in a way to put a smile on someone's face. It wasn't done to say, here, look at what I'm doing. And that's a really important process in the whole acting and performance and content generation, is know what your goal is. If you know what your goal is, you're going to do a lot better job. And if your goal is to go out there and show how awesome you are at something, well, that's why a lot of filmmakers and actors or whatever don't get their films done, is because they don't feel that it's showing the best of them. But if you're doing it to put a smile on someone's face or to entertain them, well, then, go ahead and put it out there, because people are going to enjoy it. If you're having a good time, they're going to have a good time.
And I'll tell you, when you have no skin in the game, it's a lot easier. We didn't have sponsorships. We didn't have, production value that we had to meet. It was, we honestly, it was just something that we didn't care if one person watched or 100.
Right.
And
how many did you get on like the first viewing?
Man, the first one, my daughter was sitting there counting. She said, Dad, we're at 800 people watched the show. And I'm like, seriously?
Now, Rogersville is a town of like 3,000 people. And so on your first video, you were able to capture about, a third?
Yeah.
On like probably within the first couple days, a third of the population of Rogersville.
Oh yeah. And then, she's like, what are we doing next? She caught the bug, and it, once again, it wasn't about, hey, look at us, because it was a ridiculous show.
Right.
It was 99% funny. And then maybe you might try this recipe,
right.
But, it was more just about, it just occupied our time.
Sure.
And it was funny to me how something so little could kind of get a little bit big. I'm talking Rogersville big. I'm not talking, but, and that's just how that started, and we loved it, and on pretty much everything I do on K-Raj, to some degree, I've got Little B with me, doing it.
And you can tell she eats it up.
Oh, she loves it.
Big time. She loves it.
Yeah. When people ask us,
you're in trouble. I'm just letting you know. I have a wife that kind of had that Little B mentality young at life, and she took off down a path that was like crazy. Like the things that getting bit by the entertainment bug, and you're probably feeling a little bit of it.
A little bit.
Getting bit by that bug is sometimes it's insatiable. Like you just can't get enough of it.
Yeah. She came home the other day and she was telling me, she said, Dad, I was at school and this kid come up to me and I didn't know, who she was. And she said, I saw you on TV. And, she just beamed with it and stuff, so I could see, for us, I love movies. But I'm not just I'm kind of a movie snob to some degree.
Oh, well, we got tons to talk about.
And I'll sit and watch the comical, hey, I'm just here to be entertained movie.
Right.
But I really like the movies that have a voice, that they're trying to get a message across.
Right.
And for me, that's been kind of the neat thing with this is I'm not scared because once again, I'm under no pressure.
Right.
But we all have that voice that we have something to say.
Sure.
And that's what's been neat for us is to be able to, maybe show a side of our family a lot of people don't get to see, through the quarantine kitchen. And, my wife's very involved with the chain gang.
Yeah,
and,
she does a bunch of stuff on the backside. I guess you would consider her probably a producer then on a lot of your stuff.
She does a lot more. I mean, well, you've been here in the studio with 10 minutes before the show, and I'm like, honey, run and grab this. She's like speeding across town to get it, It's been a family thing too for us, that I've got to involve my whole family with.
It's been a really cool like process. Watching you and even Ryan White, who's your co-host on the Chain Gang, which we'll talk about here soon. You guys kind of had this dream or idea, and tell us a little bit about. Go and tell us what you and Ryan started doing.
Yeah, so we run a Sunday night show live. We stream it on Facebook at 7:00 on Sunday nights. But Ryan and I, he's my cousin, and so we would get together for football on Saturdays, and our wives would be like, "You guys should be commentators." We would just kind of annoy him because we talk about this team and this team, and so then we did on Friday nights. We started doing the chains for the football show or football game. Sorry. And I told him, I said, man, we ought to have our own show. Like, we ought to start our own show, and we could care less whether one person watched it or heard it or, 100.
Right.
But we just were like, man, we could just sit for an hour and talk about sports, and get stuff off our chest. And if people wanted to watch it, they could. If not a big deal, And so,
and knowing both of you guys, I see this mental picture of a couple of dudes standing on the sidelines with the chains, and you guys are just sitting here talking about this stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's such a cool image in my head.
No, it is because we're sitting there, we're analyzing high school football at the time, and we're self-proclaimed geniuses of football,
right.
or sports.
Now Ryan played football, and you played football.
Both of us
right?
played football in high school. So, but we're once again we're the Seinfeld of the sports world. I mean, it's much to do about nothing. I mean, our shows go off on all these different tangents, and we just have a good time with it. And you talked earlier about risk. I forget the camera's there. I forget the mic's there. We have no risk whatsoever. And I think that's the difference between. I've listened to your podcast and a lot of the guests that you've had on, and that's a job. That's their job, and I just don't feel that with this. I feel it's a job, and I'm constantly wanting to make my content better and do an amazing job, but I don't have that same risk level. I don't feel.
I think, and I don't know this to be true, but it's just like with this podcast. At first, when I first started doing it, I thought, okay, well, I don't really care because I don't have sponsors. I'm going to do it myself, and I'm putting my business's name, front and center on the front of it, but I really don't think that I have any skin in the game in it. I know I'm going to put the effort and the time and all that kind of stuff into it. But then as you start to progress down that road, you start to realize is that if anything is digitally and it's on content now, you all of a sudden become, into someone's eyes, if you're that confident to go out there and put something out there, there must be some validity to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So then in some ways you become an expert on things when you may not be an expert on it, right?
No, that's true.
And so therefore, indirectly, you wind up having skin in the game because now it's your credibility that's on the line. And so to me, that's the fine line of all of this, is that you have to be careful of what you ask of your audience to believe and to do. And I think in today's culture, I think that's where when we decided to dabble in this arena, is we live in a culture now where a lot of people love to editorialize everything that they believe and they see, and we take it for the gospel when it's really just someone's opinion.
Yeah.
But that's the scary part. Not to get on a tangent or anything, but I think that's where the responsibility comes in, is that we need to be very conscious of that, because this platform, there's a reason why it's as powerful as it is.
Yeah.
I mean, people become affected by it. And even if it's one person, it could be rough and you could lead them down the wrong road. Now, I don't think you guys do that. You guys are
Hopefully
talking.
not.
You guys are, I mean, unless you want, and if you've listened to theirs, unless you want to become like an OU fan.
Yeah. And we do knock on Rudy from Notre Dame a lot. And
you know what?
that's such a lie. I make up stuff about it. And so,
do you like the film, Rudy?
I love it. I think it's such an inspirational film, but my dad's a big Notre Dame fan.
Right.
And, so I've got to jab at him some degree. And
right.
So I say that on the show, really just a jab at my dad. We're talking risk, and I don't want it to sound like, because when I started out, what I meant was when I started out, I didn't feel a lot of risk. I didn't feel,
right.
So it was easy to do, I'm filming from a cardboard table in front of my TV at home, and we're like, oh man, we got 10 people watching. Cool. Whatever, then you start adding sponsors and you want to do them justice.
Right.
So I do feel that each show,
that pressure.
Yeah. I'm getting to that point now where I'm back to where I was with my t-shirt company. Let's just like, it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, I'm looking at Rhodes mics. Leave me alone.
Right. Well, it's like, it's like this. I was up till 2 last night writing, intro and trying to go through, like, sometimes you have to close your eyes and just kind of think of how the show is going to go and kind of visualize it or whatever, and go from A to B to C to D and hopefully get to the end. Yeah. And it's therapeutic for me for the most part, because it causes me to pause and think about things a little bit more. But you're right. It's getting close to hitting critical mass on certain parts. And you're like, okay, let me keep it to where it's still fun. I think you're always kind of constantly balancing it. You don't ever want to get it too far to one end. And I think, honestly, me not having or wanting to have sponsors is kind of a cop out on my part. I look at it and go, I don't want to get down that road, but sponsors are good for a show.
Yeah.
Sponsors ensure that show keeps happening, and that, and it's also a great litmus test that people believe in the product that you're peddling. Right.
Yeah. And you go back to what we were talking about earlier. And once again, I'll just say, I think you and I are a lot alike. And, I look at you and I'm like, man, I'm never going to know anything Tom does. I'm calling you, you're in the deer state, and you're probably like, Pope, I'm trying to hunt, leave me alone. And I'm asking you about this and that. And, researching on my own, and, I've got the bug a little bit,
right.
And it's been fun, but I look at it a lot like that t-shirt company, and like, hey, we just want to sell a few t-shirts here and there. And we all have a dream, right? I mean, if I could go back and honestly say, you could do any job you wanted, the rest of your life, it would be sports broadcasting, or,
really
to a much different level. I want to be on the sidelines. I want to be at, college game day. I want to, and this is kind of that, we live in America, anything's possible. Do I keep building this show? And someday it's that small glimmer of hope. It's that outlet you have, when you've had a rough day at work, and I can just go grab a mic and just talk,
Right.
And so in that, as you know, I know nothing about this, but I'm striving to learn. I spend a lot of time every day just, how do I make this better?
Right.
And I love it. And there's a passion in it that
and I think that's what allows you to learn things as fast as you
Yeah.
do is because you love it. You're stoked by it. It's all cylinders are clicking towards that because your head's in the right place. And I think if we could harness how we could learn things and harness it to the point of, all right, let me get myself ramped up and excited about this. I mean, there's nothing you can't,
Absolutely.
go at. And I think a lot of it, 90% of it, I think that we have a hard time with is that the best way to do it, or there's nothing to it but to do it. That was one of the things my drill instructor said when I was in the military. He said, nothing to it but to do it. And that's always one of those stupid little things that always just kind of pops in my head every now and then. Like, you know what, just do it. Just figure it out. You'll figure it out along the way.
Yep. And I think, you bring up a good point. I think the military, both of us have some military background. That fear of rejection's not there for
It's
me.
weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Just because, you've been out in the world, you've seen things that a lot of people haven't.
Right.
So fear,
What's the worst that can happen?
yeah, exactly.
And sometimes you look at things and go, yeah, that's probably not going to happen on this. I've seen the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
I've seen the worst that can happen to this guy or this guy. And you look at it and go, yeah, that's not going to happen in this one. So yeah, let's try it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're probably like me too in that I don't care if people, well, that's a dumb show. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't watch, it's a positive show. We're trying to put out positive things, and I have no fear in that.
In today's day and age, if anyone were to watch your show or listen to this podcast, I'm sure they would be able to pick out something that was offensive about it.
Oh yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that can't be the thing that holds you back. You're not going to please everyone. We've all either, if you don't like it, you're right.
Yeah.
Don't listen. Just move on.
Oh, I've got, I was telling Alicia, I'm going to start a scrapbook of nasty emails and messages I get because they're just ridiculous.
Have
right?
you really been getting those?
Yeah. Well, you didn't mention my kid and, and we're like, well, we're sorry. We would just let us know next time,
Well, let's talk about that real quick because I want to set that up. So you guys started the Chain Gang started bringing a lot of attention to local high school sports out here in Rogersville. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Rogersville has no newspaper. We have no radio station. KY3 is not out here knocking down the doors to come out here and broadcast anything that's going on out here in Rogersville. We're not making any assumptions on that, or we're not upset about that. We understand. But we came up with, or John Pope and a few of the other people here with K-Raj came up with an idea of really getting in and broadcasting high school sports, even middle school sports on some occasions. And they came in and started doing this. They took a lot of all of their own time. And if you saw how much running around they did every single week, you wouldn't even complain about it. But they run around all over the place trying to make everybody feel special in high school sports and just school sports in general. And you guys are doing football, baseball, softball,
wrestling,
volleyball, and then basketball.
Yeah, basketball.
And that's boys and girls. They even did you all do some soccer?
Soccer too, yes.
Soccer.
Yep.
So I don't even know how many that was that we just rattled off. But we're operating here at K-Raj of a group of about six people.
Yeah.
We all pay our own money for all of this. And the amazing part is that, and this is what, honestly, and I haven't heard this until just now, that you had people complaining about it.
Yeah. And it's so, I don't get real worked up on, I wanted to create a scrapbook just cause it's funny.
Oh, I think you should.
I had one lady ask me, well, you and Ryan don't ever wear a mask on the show. And we're sitting there talking about kids that just made all.
Well, little do they know that you guys kiss when the camera's not rolling.
Yeah, Ryan and I, we're kissing cousins.
Kissing cousins.
And it baffled me in that, okay, I get that. We don't wear the mask while we're on the show. I can see your concern. But why are you concerned about what we're doing? And two, it's a show celebrating kids.
Right.
We're up here Sunday night, 7:00. not getting paid. We're not asking to get paid, but we're
Right.
not getting paid. We've spent our own money to do this. We're trying to highlight every kid that's out there, and you're complaining about masks.
Welcome. Welcome.
But yeah, I'm just like, I get pretty snarky, so that's why.
Well, that is the beautiful thing about you, John. And there's also like a local Rogersville resident uncensored Facebook page. And that's actually where I first heard of you. Because I saw this guy named John Pope that was on there, which John Pope is kind of it's a unique name in a way to be floating around a town. And anyways, some of the comments that you used to put on the Rogersville Residents Uncensored, and I mean, literally just calling people out or kind of jabbing people sometimes, which was, I mean, some of them just needed to be jabbed a little bit. It's like, shut your mouth.
Yeah. I mean, that's my thing is that I just always, I don't take stuff real well, especially when you're bashing a town that, everyone tries their best to do.
We're all trying
to make it great, and I get things aren't perfect, but I hate when people go on social media and just start blasting, they don't go to the source and say, hey, I have this issue. And so I will write comments in there. And most of the time, that's the funny part is the people don't get that I'm being snarky,
Right.
You do.
Oh yeah.
I do. Cause we have that sense of humor,
right.
But you've probably not seen me on there. My wife has censored me from some of the comments I've made.
I usually give it like the 1 hour rule.
Yeah.
Is if I read something and it really makes me, and honestly, I don't even do it anymore. I mean, I quit like cold turkey. I did do one interaction the other day on a friend of mine, Hawk Holman's Facebook page, because it just struck me as funny. And I thought, oh, I'll put this on there. And I mean, I got someone to bite like within like 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, okay, cool. Let's try this.
Yeah.
I love to argue. I mean, I really do. And I think I get a lot of that from just the sheer amount of shark attacks I got when I was in the military. Yeah. But I love arguing with people.
But you argue like I do, because I've seen it. You're not profane. You're not, you do it in a way that they've got to question, is he being serious or is he not?
Right.
And
He's got a straight face, but
yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, that's the kind of arguing I like to do.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, because we've kind of been dancing around the whole military issue, military enlistment of sorts, and that whole time. And you touched on something that I'm curious, and I want to ask a question before we get into it. What would you, at this point in your life right now, what would you go back and tell your 18-year-old self?
Man, that's a good question. I'm very content with my life. And some people say, well, you shouldn't be content. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm blessed where I'm at. I love my job at Edward Jones.
Because of the journey you've taken also, too.
And that's why I felt like, sometimes I look at it and say, man, I've lived more life in 30 years. I'm 40, obviously. But I mean, in my first 30 years, then most people get the opportunity to in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's just been this huge journey for me. And I've loved it. You know, I would say 18-year-old self, don't take some stuff as serious as it seems.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we all learn as we get older.
I think I would tell my 18-year-old self the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I think, and I've told my wife this, because I'm 46 now, and I've told my wife that I have done more in the last 6 years of my life than I did in the first 40 years of my life. And I attribute probably 90% of that to the 2 years that I spent in the military.
Yeah.
And granted, for 10 years, 20 years after I got out of the military, I was I felt like I was in a holding pattern. It was like I was in a state of shell shock. And then all of a sudden, I turned 40 years old, and it was like, you need to get going.
Yeah.
And it was like that mental drill instructor in my head, told me to drop and do 50.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
That's a hard transition, though.
It is.
I mean, going from the military to civilian life is hard. It's hard.
It was 20 years hard for me.
Yeah, I get it though. I mean, I really do. You come to my house on the weekend and we're cleaning the garage or something as a family. You'll hear my wife say, "Dude, you've been out 15 years now."
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm barking out orders like, and I'll have to catch myself and say, "Wow, okay,
Yeah.
hone it in, buddy."
Well, we just sold our house, in the last couple of days. And yeah, the drill instructor in me came out in full force because I had a lot of emotions that were playing. And I had to tell people I don't care about your emotions.
Yeah. But it's that thing.
And
right?
you live in a house full of girls.
Yeah.
So that can be a tightrope sometimes.
Yeah. I've never surrendered in battle, but I think I have with them. I just wave the white flag now and say, I give up. You guys won. It was hard because, my motto was, never surrender.
Right.
But, man, they're too powerful.
So, talk to us about your military experience.
Yeah, so it was kind of a weird. I always knew I wanted to go in the military.
So you knew when you were younger that's what
yeah.
you were going to do. I did too.
Oh, probably about 6 years old. I mean, and I knew I was going to serve.
Right.
And so after college, I did. But it was kind of a weird twist. I went up, and my recruiter's like, well, you need to be a psychologist, because your ASVAB score or whatever. And I'm like, man, I really don't want to do that. I'm only going to stay in 4 years. I'm going to go get a big boy job,
Right.
No, well, psychologist is all you qualify for. Well, I didn't know better. And I said, okay, I'll be a psychologist, and went through the school to do that. And luckily I had airborne in my contract. And so went through the psychology school, went to airborne school. And while I was there,
And you're talking the United States Army.
and the Army,
right?
yes, yeah. And while I was there, these two Rangers came up to formation. They call out my roster number and another guy's roster number and pull us out in front of formation. And, you've been selected to be in Ranger Battalion. Do you accept? Well, there's 400 people standing in front of me. Am I going to say no? So I said, yes, Sergeant, or whatever. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, they'll figure out I'm a psychologist. I mean, there's no...
And they're going to boot you out.
They're going to boot me out, So I was like, I'll play along. Everybody will think I'm cool, And so go along, get through jump school, and everybody's celebrating.
Now, it wasn't as easy as go on and get through jump school, though, right?
Jumping out of an airplane is pretty easy. You just fall out the door.
But, I mean, how long did they teach you? How long do you go through, class before you actually jump out of a plane?
It's about 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
So within a month of going through airborne, you're already jumping out of planes.
Yeah, you do 5 jumps, and that's been a long time ago, but you usually do 5 jumps in jump school.
Really?
And I'd been skydiving.
Oh, that's right.
Before that,
you were a skydiver before,
but it's much different. Oh man, the military hurts.
Really?
That's what I was not expecting. Yeah, those chutes are not.
Plus, you got a lot more gear on than you
do.
You don't have parachute pants on whenever you jump out.
No. But these guys came down and got me, and I'm like, man, they didn't figure out I'm a psychologist. And so I went through selection, and at all these points, I'm thinking they're going to figure it out, and got picked to go to Ranger Battalion, got an assignment, went to 2nd Ranger Battalion.
Where was that at?
That's in Washington State.
Washington State.
Fort Lewis. And I'm thinking they're going to figure this out at any point. It wasn't until about 3 months later, I'm in Ranger Battalion, First Sergeant calls me down and is like, hey, Pope, are you a freaking psychologist? I said, yeah, Roger, First Sergeant. Because I had to go through medic school before psychology school. And so.
Oh, really?
So I had 2
So how long
MOSs.
was that?
The medic school was, I want to say 3 months. And then the psychology school was 9 months. So I spent a year just doing that.
And was that all at the same place?
Yeah, at Fort Sam.
Fort Sam?
Yep. So anyways, luckily I got
now
to
you're
stay.
you're about 2 years in now, right?
Yeah. So about 2, maybe 2.5
really
years in at that point. And so, but yeah, I mean, I ended up, they'd hide me in schools, and so he'd be like, well, you got orders to go to Fort Bragg. You got to leave Ranger Battalion. I was like, man, I can't do that. And So he'd send me to Ranger School, or he'd send me to, SF Medic School, or,
Right.
and then the war started. And, at that point, no one cared.
Right.
They'd spent so much money on me that they're like,
Now, what year was this?
well, I mean, when I went in 1999
Okay.
and then got out in 2005.
Oh, wow.
So
you were in during September 11th then?
I was in Germany. We were doing some training. It was kind of cool because we were doing like the Czech special ops, and I mean, just all these different countries.
So you were a full-blown Ranger by then?
Yeah, full-blown Ranger. And we were doing some fast roping out of these little birds. And we were dog tired. And commander comes out and he's like, hey, they just flew some planes in the World Trade Center. We're going to war. Well, we think he's messing with us because we're
really
tired. And so one of the guys ended up missing the rope and broke his leg, and I had to take him to the hospital. And sure enough, everybody's crowded around these televisions, and I went back out and I said, guys, he's not joking. I said, they really did, and
really
attacked the United States. And
so how quick after all that did you guys go?
Probably about 2 months.
Really? So there was a ramp up then that you all knew this was all going to happen.
Yeah. One of the things, I don't know if I can talk about that, but we're very prepared.
That is cool that you even that you can even say that.
Well,
I can't tell you, or I'd have to kill my whole listening audience.
I try to be as, I don't know. My point was we're always ready. And so even though we were in Germany, we had everything ready to go to war.
Right.
So the big holdup was we couldn't get flights out because they grounded
they grounded everything.
Everybody. So, but yeah, we were.
And then you went to, where did you go?
We went to Kandahar, in Afghanistan. It was supposed to be the hotbed of terrorism,
Right?
And it was nothing. I mean, the first rotation.
Why do you think that they thought that was the hotbed of terrorism?
Well,
in retrospect,
because that was the hub of
Right.
really the Taliban. I think at that time, what happened though was as soon as they knew we were coming, they all fled for the mountains.
Right.
So we had some skirmishes, here and there, the first rotation, but it wasn't bad.
Now, how many rotations did you go over for?
I went to Afghanistan 4 times and Iraq 3 times. Wow. But
And how long was each rotation?
Usually about 3 months.
3 months.
So not bad. I think my longest was so I was in Afghanistan when Iraq started. And so we ended up staying, I want to say about almost 6 months.
Really?
Which we're griping,
Right.
Everyone else is staying 18 months at a time. And we're just doing 3-month rotations. So,
Wow.
but
so, talk about like the mindset of, because the way that you kind of presented this was that Ranger, you went to Ranger school and then that was it. Take us through, like, Ranger school is pretty in depth. It's actually very in depth. There's a lot of stuff that you do. And how many months is Ranger school?
If you go straight through, it's 3 months.
3 months.
And
it's a
luckily,
hard 3 months though, right?
it is. It's more. That's why I try to tell everybody it's not physical like you think. I mean, the first 2 weeks is very physical. You make it past the first 2 weeks. After that, it's pretty much just mental. If you can just tell yourself, "Don't quit. This will end." Because I mean,
because they're not really trying to condition you too much more than what Army boot camp already conditioned you to be.
It's just constant fatigue and hunger, and they're trying to teach you to be a leader,
to push
a
little harder.
Yep. When you've slept 2 hours in 2 days, and had 2 meals,
Which, if you go out into the, it was like for me, even going out into the fleet, once I got out of boot camp and got out of my school, I got out to the fleet, and then we were on an aircraft carrier, and then it was working, I remember one time they told us, you're only required to have 1 hour or was it maybe 2 hours of sleep a day?
Yeah.
And you're like, seriously?
So I was thinking about this, Tom. You know what the best stimulus package would be? to go back and pay us by the hour, the actual hour.
That would be great. And I would actually probably,
We'd be billionaires.
I would entertain it. I really would. It screwed up my sleep for the rest of my
yeah.
life, though.
Me too.
It literally did.
Yep.
And I lived underneath a catapult on the aircraft carrier. And so when you would go out to sleep, I mean, you better learn how to go to sleep with the constant sound of someone beating a sledgehammer on top of a metal deck all night long with flight ops.
My wife gets so annoyed because if I change my sleep pattern just the slightest bit, it's done.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm the same way.
I can sleep 2 hours a night and be fine.
And you know, you were in for how many years total?
7.
You were in for 7 years. I was in for 2. And it screwed me up.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of it too is I think I have that mentality of wanting to get stuff done and whatever. I think there's a lot of other things that are involved with it. But you were in for 7, and I can't imagine the effect that it had and still has on you. And I look at the effect. I mean, I still wear my dog tags because it was so impactful in my life, was just that 2 years of my life after. And, you know, you see people that go to college for 4 years and, you know, they're diehard fans forever, but it's a very impressionable age that we all went in. And I've actually kind of said before is that if I could, probably the thing I would go back and tell myself is that I would tell myself to grow up a little bit before I went into the military, because I learned some things I probably had no business learning at that time in my life. I wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge transition, you know.
It affected me for a long time afterwards.
Yeah. And it's the quirky things, you know, that you do that's funny, you know, that, you know, I'll be driving, you know, one of the big things in Iraq was, which we didn't drive a lot. We were mainly on helicopters, but when we did, that was the time of all the IEDs. So if you saw a barrel just sitting there, you know, it was like, oh, stop, you know, we can't. And it's funny because it was like 3 or 4 months ago, I was driving out to a friend's house in the country, you know, the dirt road, and I had little B with me. We were going to go out there and deer hunt or something. I can't remember. And I saw a barrel, and I'm like, oh, barrel, you know.
You're talking like a 50-gallon drum,
50,
right?
50-gallon drum, and I'm like, oh, there's a barrel, you know.
So,
and it's funny, 15 years later, I'm still scanning for that crap, you know, like what it's got corn or cow manure in it or something, but, you know, it's just, and it was just for a second.
And I don't think people are aware, but that was kind of synonymous with IEDs that were on the side of the road, was a 50-gallon barrel, and they would like disguise them and hide them.
Yeah, you hope you saw them, you know, and it could be anything. I mean, a pile of trash, it shouldn't be there.
Right.
You know, a donkey, you know, it shouldn't be in the middle of the road. But, yeah, I mean, it just, you know, you drive like that for 3 months, and then you're supposed to transition back to the United States and, you know, be able to go down I-44 and drive normal, you know. You know, and it's still, it does, you know, it still pops up in your head from time to time as far as, you know, just scanning, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, and you know, I still have a hard time just with some of the, just the security training that we went through, just some of those little things that they really, really hammered into your head. I mean, really hammered into your head. And of course, we were in the military. We had the benefit of being in the military in the 90s. And I'm sure it's maybe a little bit more kinder, gentler now than what it was, you know, back then. But they really hammered it into your head.
Yeah.
And it was with and rightly so. But there were some points that they really got across, and they've never left.
Yeah.
They've stayed in there. That programming really, really worked. And sometimes it takes a hot second to kind of cross check yourself and go, let's not react that way. Yeah.
I've got a friend on Facebook, and you know, I think he was an E5 when I came into Ranger Battalion, and he gave me a tough time, but he was a great leader.
Right.
And we're friends, and we're both out, you know, we're both doing our own thing. And when I talk to him, it's so hard not to call him Sergeant. And I think we ended up being the same rank for a little bit, you know. And even I'd be I think I was an E6 and he was E6, almost E7. And I'd still go up to him and be like, Sergeant, you know. it's hard on Facebook, like my, platoon leader or something, not to call them by rank. And
Right.
just realize, hey, we're out,
I mean, I think if I still saw my drill instructor from the military, I would probably treat him with a reverence that probably, that I would probably,
Yeah.
it would click back pretty quick.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. He taught me a really valuable lesson, and I still haven't quite figured out what that lesson was, but I've used it a lot in my life. As I remember going into the Navy, I was very unimpressive prior to going in the military. I was probably one of those people in high school that you didn't notice much. But I had been running track and cross country, and actually more track. Ran long distance sprints. But anyways, I got in the Navy, and I was the fastest guy out there. And I could run 1.5 miles like nobody's business. I mean, I was good. And it just, everything kind of clicked. And I got out there, and I found that kind of vigor, and I got a little more pep in my step, and it was fun. And my company commander, Chief Petty Officer Simmons, he was a little short black guy, and he was built like, they called him Nitro in high school. So he was a badass. And we were running the grinder out there, and we had to run I think it was like running 2 miles or something like that. And he was like, "Hey Baker, you think you can beat me?" And we were like in the last stretch, and we were neck and neck. And he was like, "You think you can beat me?" I said, "Yes, sir. I know I can beat you." He's like, "All right, let's try it." And I mean, I smoked him. Got to the end, and he goes, "Hey, why don't you go run another 2 miles?" He goes, "The rest of you guys do push-ups till Baker's done."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
Whoops."
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what that's what the military is about, right? I mean, especially at that stage,
Right.
that in a way he was like, good job.
Yeah.
But he punished you,
Yeah.
for it.
You
So,
you get your claps. All right. Now go run another one. Yeah.
That's why it's funny, because, my daughters will, I've got 2 daughters, and I want them to be girls. I want them to be feminine. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not raising weak kids,
Right.
and so, they'll remind me too, like, Dad, you're not in Ranger Battalion anymore,
Well, it's like I was telling Cecilia, my daughter, last night. She was like, "Dad, what am I going to do when I get older in my life?" I said, "You're going to join the Air Force. You're going to join Spec Ops." I said, "Because those are the baddest ass guys on the planet."
are.
And she was like, "What are they?" And I was telling her about like how they get into like actually be Spec Ops, because they do something like they got to go out in the middle of nowhere and like haul a body. What, I forget how many miles it is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I got to spend some really cool time with PJs, this Air Force Spec Ops, and when I went to Special Forces Medic School in Fort Bragg, and so it was SEALs, PJs, Rangers, and Green Berets. The PJs, though, they were so young. I mean, 17, 18-year-old kids almost,
Really?
just young. And they would say, "Hey, do you want to run with us?" And I'm cocky, I'm a Ranger, you're in the Air Force, dude, And I was like, "Yeah, I'll run with you." And we ended up doing this run, swim, run. And those guys, I couldn't.
They're
keep up with
unstoppable,
them.
man.
I mean, they killed me, and they never let me live it down, but just amazing warriors.
Yeah.
Those guys are.
Yeah. So now that we've like rounded out your military, how do you think that got you to where you're at now? I've always thought that and maybe I've given the military more credit than I should, but I really feel that a lot of those early on changes because now you went to college as soon as you got out of high school. Do you think you would have taken that same type of course had you just gone to high school and not gone to the military? Or had you gone to college and not gone to the military?
I don't, I question that all the time, because I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I would. I don't think my life would be as fun as it is, or what I call a journey, and an amazing journey at that.
So indirectly, probably the military caused you to be able to find joy in this life that we have.
It does. I'm going to sound cheesy. I know I'm going to sound really cheesy. I don't mean it to sound this way, but, I've got a group of guys that, we lost in the wars that mean something to me, I don't sit around and mourn for them. I'm proud of them, but I wear their bracelets, and of course I'm not wearing one today. I'm talking about it, but every day I wear bracelets. And I always think, am I honoring their sacrifice with my life the way I'm living it? I mean, cause I'm like everybody else, man. I get down, I want to curl up in a ball and say, man, this sucks. I don't want to do it anymore. But, I always think, man, they gave up so much at a young age and don't get to live this life,
Right.
And so when I do kooky stuff like, join K-Raj and, start this sports radio show and, it's because I want to get the most out of life I can.
Right.
For me, that's spiritually, that's physically, that's, testing myself, intellectually every day, just I want to test myself constantly.
Right.
And I don't know if I had the inspiration of those guys that, like, say I hadn't went to the military. I mean, I think I'd be a fun guy still, but I don't think I would have as much fun as I do now. I want to honor that sacrifice.
Sure.
And I want to leave this world better than I found it because they did for me.
Right.
And the same thing could be said about Kix and you and Will and Lauren, Rich has been my buddy for a long time. We work great at K-Raj because we know nothing and you help us, or
right.
If I need this, Rich is like, oh, I'll run and grab it for you. Or,
right.
We
are, it's a team. It's a weird team.
Yeah.
We're ragtag in a lot of ways and we're getting better. I think
but,
we're learning to feel each other out.
But you have those inspirational people in your life, right? That, made your life different in some way, and I feel like this group for me, has been that, I mean, you guys have been a great group of friends through a very tough year. I didn't know you guys, most of you guys a year ago.
Right. That's what's kind of crazy about all of it.
I feel like I've known you 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, but,
it's different, isn't it?
But I mean, I like, when you're talking about, the chain gang, or I want to push because I see like what you're doing, and I'm like, man, Tom's really good at that. And if I could just do a little piece of that, with my show. And
to me, the deciding factor, and it's kind of like what you talked about earlier about, getting some nasty grams about your show. And this is something that I've had to start to really kind of realize over the course. This year, I kind of took an altruistic stance on work, and I decided to volunteer a lot of my time to help a lot of different groups out there. And I learned a lot in that process. I learned that it sucks to not make any money. I learned that you have to pick yourself back up, obviously, if you're not making a dime on things, and your worth is not based off that either. That's a hard part. Mm-hmm. That's still hard to navigate, is that your worth is not based off of how much money you make, but it's the impact that you make in people's lives and that kind of stuff. And that's another whole trail that I don't even want to go down right now. And I'm still trying to figure it all out. But one of the big things and the most prominent things that I realized is that the people that are most deserving of your time and your talent are the people that appreciate how much time and talent you have. And that's not always synonymous with putting yourself out there and helping people. And I'll just, and I think this is the main thing that I've realized this year, is that I have run into people that have taken my time and my talent that I offered willingly for free, didn't charge them nothing, and they didn't appreciate it. And they wasted my time, and they treated it like it wasn't that big of a deal. And that was a hard pill to swallow early on, but it was a really good pill to swallow early on, because it allowed me to kind of start distilling who you deal with. And after it happens to you a few times, you really start to realize who those people that are important in your life are. And if you can hang on to those people, then they're going to help you get even further in life, you know? And that kind of goes with everything. But even in this like creative field and, you know, kind of like with you, I think the biggest challenge that you guys have is that technology is moving at a pace that is faster than the average person's pace to learn it. And that can be scary because you're like, oh crap, I got all this and, you know, this, and I got to have this web page and I got to have this and this and this and this and this to be able to put out this content. That can be daunting, like to the point that it just stops people and go, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I feel even the transition from, you know, I think it was 3 months ago, I was asking you what's the difference between a USB and a HDMI cable. You know, I remember
we laugh about it now.
We
right?
laugh. You know, I've spent a lot of time and money at Best Buy. But I remember before our first show, you know, it wasn't like I didn't want it to look good because I stayed up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, even with the bare bone stuff we had,
right,
trying to make it good. And I hope you understand how much we appreciate what you've done. Oh,
definitely. No, you guys are great.
Ryan and I, man, we think highly of you. We'd still be on the fold out table with, you know, what we had.
And folks, I'll just tell you the only thing I really did for all you film people out there. So they were using one of these little dinky Logitech cameras. That was what you initially started out with, was this little dinky Logitech camera, which has no aperture settings or nothing like that. I mean, what you see is what you get. And so I brought in just a regular LED video light. I set it at a 45 degree, you know, off the front. And then I introduced a little LED light behind a television. And we bumped up our production value probably by about 25% just by doing that.
80. You know,
but it was just, and we took little steps.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll tell you this, and this is why it was the most important thing. I mean, the probably the biggest thing that I've always kind of cringed at the Chain Gang show is the audio, because I know it's just the thing that's going to bite everybody in the butt. It's in this business, it's the thing that's always screwed every single one of us is audio. We've always, it's like, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But the audio mics that you all had, which are little like Blue Yeti mics, for the most part, they work pretty good. I mean, Facebook audio streaming sucks in general. And if you have a good microphone with Facebook audio, it's going to be moderately good on Facebook. If you have a crappy microphone, it's going to be even more crappier on Facebook, just the way the streaming content works. But you guys were able to, the thing that they did, and this is the most important part, is their content was always consistent. It was always fun. It was entertaining, and it was engaging, because they do a live stream. So they asked their audience to engage in them. Yeah. And that's what's been really cool. But if you can, with the Chain Gang, which is basically just it's a football show, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all sports. Right now, it's primarily football.
And it's two guys sitting at a desk, and you guys do have a little, was it like Ecamm or Restream or whatever, that you can pop some graphics up. You can pop up local commercials on if you want to for your sponsorship.
That. I mean, that's the evolution of all this.
But when it started, you didn't have that, but you were able to kind of incorporate elements as you moved along to bump the production value up. But the content has stayed the same. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you all have always kind of, well, you haven't kind of, you have stayed true to yourself as far as what you're going to put out there and what you wanted to. And I think that's the important part. That content is important.
I think so. You know, and it's funny, in Ryan and I could not, that show would not be, it wouldn't be anything without Ryan, because
you guys both have a very, very like unique sense of not only humor, but just the delivery. And you guys don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, I mean, it just reminds me of being at home, you know, on that Saturday morning, we're sitting on the couch watching TV or watching college football. And I think that's where we get is we forget that camera's there. We forget the mic's there.
And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. And we don't care, you know, I may look like an idiot one week. He may look like, well, you know, we don't care.
Right.
You know, we're having fun with it. You're getting to see the real John Pope and Ryan White,
right.
You know, and I got to bring up before, you know, I said, we get nasty messages. We get a ton of positive, you know, thank yous and support. And
no, you all have gotten a ton.
Yeah. So
a ton. But I will say this, folks, and this is just for anybody out there that's listening that feels like they write a nasty gram. For every one nasty gram that you get, it can cancel 100 good ones. Yeah, be nice out there, folks. It would be better to call a person and try to discuss it than to lay a barb at someone and try to go, oh, here, let me try to interject my opinion on things.
Because it's usually you're getting those after, you know, because a typical Friday for us during football season is, you know, we're working, you know, I work 4:30 at Edward Jones, and I'm leaving there and sprinting to the high school, or maybe it's an away game. You know, we're traveling an hour or 2 hours away, and you know, we get set up in the booth up there, and, you know, we're trying to do everything we can to get, you know, the game streaming so everybody can watch. And then we're home at 11, you know, 10, 11 o'clock.
Right.
And it's usually about 10:30 or 11 when you're getting that nasty message, and you just spent your entire day, you know, so
killing yourself.
Oh man. So that's so true what you said, you know, about you'll get 100 nice messages, and it's that one that's just like, dang it, you know, stings.
That's the slog of this stuff, is that there are just folks out there that are socially inept, and they don't realize what the power of what they say or do is. And they honestly, and I hate to say it, it's that same thing we just talked about. It's people, there are people, even people that watch your content, that don't appreciate the time that you put into it. They don't appreciate talent that you have. And it does suck, but it is a reality of the world, which, you know, being in the military, you know about a lot of realities of the world. So you just kind of go, okay, I'll just slough it off. But
and nice thing is, you know, if you didn't come out of the military with thick skin, you didn't go through it right. You know? Because that's not a place where you're getting compliments all the time. So I remember taking the bus from the airport and getting to the base, and I remember the bus pulling up outside of wherever they were swearing us in at, and I remember seeing this guy. The sidewalk was lined with people doing push-ups. Yeah. And there was people yelling at these guys doing push-ups, and gals. There were gals out there too that were getting it done. And I saw this guy run out of this room, and he came out, and I mean, he was like, he looked like he was running from someone, you know, running from death.
And then halfway down the sidewalk, I realized he was running onto the bus, and he got on the bus, and I mean, he lit our world on fire.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I remember going, and I hate to say this, but I really did remember, I would look down and go, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Oh man, I think that's in everything you do. You know, I mean, if you think about fear, when do you have the fear? It's before anything's even happened, you know? So like, you're sitting on that bus, you're watching, you haven't even started yet.
Yeah.
I put out, I made this video, and it's to the Sound of Silence, right? The Disturbed version of Sound of Silence. But it's stuff about, you know, it's just pictures of Ranger Battalion guys. And I said on there, it's like, it is the silence before the storm. Oh yeah. Is where the fear is, you know, and I, you know, you and I were talking about creativity and what holds people up. And I can see that. You have to even put yourself out there, and you're sitting there and you're double thinking, or you're questioning yourself. And it's that silence before the storm that we either stop and don't do the mission, or we do it. And you lower your head, you lay your ears back, and you go at it. Yeah. So, and you just, you're ready for all of the bad comments. You're ready for all this. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt,
but you're willing to take it. As like I've said, we were this whole process of us just like selling our house like in like 2 days. It was so stupid, but we had a goal. And I remember, and because this isn't the first time this has happened, and my wife, I think she flinches every time we get ready to do this because I'm like, all right, we're going at it. I said, we're going to go hard. And I said, we got stocking Band-Aids, baby, because there's going to be a lot of bleeding. and it works.
Yeah.
And it does. It does. You can get through it. And I was like, the last couple of days, we had a lot of tears in our house. We had a lot of upset people in our house with this whole process. But it was like, guys, we're going to make it through it. We're going to make it through it. We're going to make it through it. And it is, and I can only attribute it to this job. I can only attribute it to spending years on the stage acting. As I remember the first time getting up on stage and going, I'm going to fail so bad. And guess what? I did. I did fail so bad. I sucked. I failed to deliver. And so I had 3 more shows to prove myself, And that's what I love about, and I guess that's what I enjoy about life in general after the military, is that I know the secret.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it but to do it.
Yep.
And you'll figure it out.
Yep. No, that's right. And you've had your wife on the show several times,
Right.
And I love the chemistry in those podcasts, No, I mean, you can just tell and it reminds me of my wife, and I don't think she knew what she was getting into when she married me,
mine didn't
either. But she has been, we talk about no fear and, putting your head down, and man, I've been fearful in life, and she's been my anchor,
Oh,
and
totally.
John, you can do this. She's my biggest cheerleader, and I hope I am hers. You
Yeah.
know? So I don't want it to sit here and say, well, I did this and I did that. Man, if I didn't have the support of her and my kids, telling me I can do it, or, being on the show with me and just being a part of it,
Well, and that's interesting too, because it's like, just like what you're saying. I mean, there's very few things in this life that we do that doesn't require the help of our friends and our family. I mean, we're social. We're a social people. Yeah. We're a social species. Let's put it that way. And it is super important. It's like, and I've said it a million times, is these processes of getting these things done are inherently hard. And you make it harder by thinking that you can do it all by yourself. And in order for the help to happen, you have to be humble.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part for a lot of people, is being humble and realizing that you don't know it all. Or
in my case, anything.
Yeah, but John, I'll tell you what, you guys have the hardest parts licked. I mean, technology is easy to learn. There's a plethora of information out there, but to understand like what you go through on a football field, you had to have done it before. Yeah. It's kind of hard, at my age of being 46 to go, I'm going to tell you what it's like to be on a football field. I don't know,
Yep. No, but we have our own army, and that's what's nice,
right.
We constantly brag about you on the show because you'll come in last minute and be like, oh, that's horrible. No, you don't ever say it's horrible. You say, can I show you something different?
Yeah. I think I've said it's ghetto a couple times.
Yeah,
it's a little ghetto.
I was trying to church it up a little bit for the audience, but I mean, to think where we've, and by no means, I mean, I know your audience, and where they're at, and where I'm at, or they're probably turned this off a while back, but we all strive. We're all creative, and we all have a voice, and it's not an ego thing for any. I don't think any of us. We just want to be heard. We want people to appreciate what we do.
I think if it's an ego thing, it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
So if you're at the beginning of this process and ego is a major contributor to that, it's not going to last as long. You're not going to be able to, you can't endure all of this that comes at you. I mean, by the first time somebody comes up and gives you a bad remark, your ego is going to crash and burn. It's just not going to last through it. And so it has to be for the love of it. And, that was one of the things, when I started out doing theater, it was amateur theater. Amateur is for the love of it. And that's why I still do it. It's because I was never beholden to the paycheck to do it. I did it because I loved it. I did it because, and that was the first thing I did when I got out of the military. Came home with my tail tucked between my legs and didn't know what the heck I was going to do. Yeah. And I just decided, all right, I'm going to go dance on stage,
Yeah.
But that was, I look at it, and some of the greatest things that have ever happened to me came out of that weird decision to do that.
Yeah. Hey, let's just try this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I'll get laughed off stage. Well, it could be good. It could be bad.
So, since we're on air, and this will be a verbal contract since this we put out publicly,
right?
When you make it famous as an actor, we've already talked about this off air, but we're going to talk about it now. I get to be one of the guys in your entourage, like the show Entourage.
Well, I think, and you and I've talked about it. I talked about it with my wife, but I think what I'm going to have you be is you are security / chef.
I
think
both.
that's a great.
Yeah.
And you can and you can always have because I'm a little hypoglycemic, so you can always have a Snickers bar on you.
I'm there,
and that way I won't get angry at anyone.
Yeah. That'd be perfect. So I wanted to make sure
I accept your verbal
contract on air.
Don't know if it'll ever happen, but I accept your verbal contract.
No, I think it will, man. I'm excited. So.
No, it's and I think that's where a lot of this all kind of comes down to. It comes down to this idea of things can always be worse, and we can always look at it. And I'm going back to, what's the worst that can happen? The idea that all of this stuff can go bad, it can, but it's all fixable, and it just takes a little bit of elbow grease. And the more you get into it, and I'm kind of going down a weird road here, but the thing that is that the people that you have with you along the way really are, it makes it that much more important. And if you've got people along the way that are mooches and they're just dragging you down, get rid of them.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. It's part of their journey, I mean, I ran into the, stuff when I was younger. There were people that, you would have along the way, and they were ego driven, and they were a mooch, and they were looking at this stuff. They didn't want to work hard on anything. And you sit there and think, man, they're never going to make it. And then you see them later on down the road, and they did great.
Yeah.
And maybe it was because of that rejection that they got early on. Granted, it wasn't the nicest thing to do at the time, but it was something that was going to invigorate them or light a fire under their butt. I mean, life changes us.
It's like I was telling my daughter about first year marriage, right? It's not that I want her to go struggle, but I do,
Yeah.
Not in her marriage, but I mean, when you're first married, if you're not stressed about bills and you're not stressed about, if you're not eating ramen once just because, you build off that, And I always say, I want my friends around me that ate ramen when I did,
Oh yeah.
Because those are your true friends, and not that I've, that
they hung around. Yeah.
Not that obviously we're not eating ramen anymore, but actually I did have a quarantined kitchen about it.
I know you did.
But
you actually showed the proper way to make ramen noodles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are the buddies you want around you,
right?
Your wife who struggled with you all along the way, and your friends, and because when you're done with that journey, or you're to a place where you can stop and celebrate, man, it means so much more to have that entourage around you
because of the journey. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of that whole idea of that if you are someplace and you wish you were at home, it's an adventure.
Yeah.
If you're someplace and you're glad you're there, it's a vacation.
Yep. Well, how boring would life be if at 18 someone handed me $20 million?
That would be boring.
It really would. I mean,
I don't think it would last very long.
No, at 18 now, I'd have told you that would have been a great life.
Yeah.
But now at 40, I'm looking back saying, gosh, I would not trade any of that 20 years for $20 million.
Yeah, because, and I hate to say it, and want it to sound weird or ego driven, but I look at some of the people that didn't have the arc that I had, that took that normal road, that road that everybody kind of tells you, you go to high school, you get out of high school, you go to college for 4 years, you get done, you get a job, and then you meet somebody that you love, and then you get married, and then you have kids, and then, I didn't do that. I did it the wrong way. I didn't do it based off that. But man, I love the life that I've led up till now. I've done some really cool stuff.
Did you do it the wrong way though?
Well, yeah. Exactly.
I mean, that's my
in the
thing,
postmodern way of looking at things. No, I didn't. I didn't do it the wrong way.
Yeah. And that's what's neat.
I did it the right way for me.
Yeah.
For my mentality.
That's what's neat about having so many experiences, like I think both of us have, is that we connect with so many different people. I'm not from, this suburban middle class family that did it this way, or, I have an experience that probably I can relate to most everyone, in any social bracket, and any, and that's what's fun about life is I'm not limited by my experiences, and my friends aren't, I'm not limited to that group of friends only.
Right.
We have a wide variety of really good friends here in Rogersville,
Something just dawned on me, and I agree with you, but now this actually kind of scares me a little bit. I just realized that I'm sitting in a room with a trained killer that went to school to study your brain.
Yeah. Well, so
have you been doing any mental ranger tricks on me
this whole time? As soon as we're
son of a
no, it's funny when I went to the E6 board. Of course, they have your records in there. Well, I started out as a medic, and I switched over to infantry, just advance in rank faster. And so I had a combat medical badge, I had a combat infantry badge, and so my sergeant major, he goes, "Boy," he's like, "I've never seen anybody with a combat medic badge and a CIB, and you're a freaking psychologist." He's like, "You're too much for me," and that was it.
Did they use you in that capacity?
No, gosh, no.
In the Rangers at all?
No.
They never had anybody come in that was having a hard time coming and talk to you about stuff?
No. You don't do that. Man, that sidelines. Well, one, you don't let that happen.
Not to go back down that road, but
yeah, you just don't let that happen.
Right.
You don't let psychological issues happen in country. Now
Right.
maybe it happens when you get back. I don't know, but I was not qualified to do. They had beat the psychology out of me by then, so I am loosely qualified to do a few different counseling sessions, but man, nothing like I was trained for. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, John, I want to ask this before we kind of close out. What do you see as far as right now? Where does all of this go from here? All of these projects that you have, we've got this. Some days it feels like it's in limbo. Some days it feels like it's going full speed ahead. Our little K-Raj studio out here, but where do you feel that that's going in your eyes?
I'm like everybody else, and I'm not scared to say I have dreams, and so to say, could you be on ESPN someday, or could you have a really popular podcast, as a sports analyst or something? Right. I feel I could do it. Now
I do too.
Do I have the time to do that? That's, you just don't put two mics in front of you and you've got this podcast.
No.
Very well,
Yeah.
how much time it takes, but I enjoy it, and it's something, I could see Ryan and I doing this for a while.
Do you think you'd still do it if you didn't enjoy it?
Oh, no.
So you would quit if you didn't enjoy it?
Yeah. We're involved in so many things right now, and, I'm very involved at my university, and, very involved in the community, and
what university?
Drury.
Drury?
Yep.
Where'd you get a degree in there?
Business.
Did you? Okay.
So, we're very involved in all those things. And if the amount of time we put into, chain gang and in high school sports, if you didn't love it, you couldn't do it.
Right.
You just couldn't. But I will tell you, outside, I mean, I love hunting, I love fishing, and I truly love doing the chain gang. So I don't know where it goes.
Well, and it's weird how things always kind of come around full circle. There's one of my early idols when I was a kid was a local disc jockey. His name was Warren Kretsch, and I used to love listening to him on the radio. And then later on in life, he and I got to do theater together. And I had this kind of like starstruck attitude towards him. And I was like, oh, that's Warren Kretsch, man. That's awesome, And it's weird how, 7 degrees of separation, things kind of come back and you start looking at things. And some of those early heroes that you had and aspirations that you have kind of come back and rear their head. And you're like, oh, yeah, that seems like the right thing to do at this time. And so the cool thing is, and this might be the better way to look at this, is that when you make it famous, I need to be your like audio visual guy.
Hey, we're taking care of each other.
That's right.
I'm either going to be carrying a gun and Snickers here in the next few years, or you and I will be traveling the world or the country watching college football.
That sounds great to me.
Either way, to me. I'm good. So.
Well, John, I want to thank you for being on, and I really want to say this is that the stuff that you've been able to do, don't take it lightly, because it has been really good. I know that it's easy to get hung up on the beauty of a shot and all of the depth and the layers and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is the thing that makes it great is the heart. And if you have the heart, then all that other stuff is going to fix itself, because there's going to be people that are going to come along and they're going to go, hey, I want to help you.
Yep.
And so the heart is the main thing. And I think that's something that as creatives, we lose that focus, is that it's the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I really appreciate everything that you've done for this community. What you've done for me is you've inspired me in a lot of different ways, and probably more ways I don't even know yet. It's probably going to, as we go down this road together, there's probably going to be a lot more stuff that kind of pops up and rears its ugly head. But I'm so glad that you came in and shared your story, and we're going to have you back on, because when you get into the thick of chain gang and like it becomes bigger and even more crazier, we're going to want to hear about what you guys are doing. So I really want to thank you for coming in.
Well, I appreciate it. All you need to do is the intro and what you just said. And this, those were,
we'll just cut everything out.
Yeah, cut everything else out. But no, thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
You have been listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Analysis of your biometrics have been compiled and calculated. You are now a minuscule part of the collective. Enjoy the rest of your pitiful day.